Okay, so I set up in the router table with I'm going to need 2 router bits in order to accomplish this. I've milled what's going to create the sidewalls of my drawers, and it's important to mill this down to the thickness that corresponds to a size of a straight bit that you have or have access to purchasing. And straight bits, you can find, this one happens to be a 1/2 inch, which is a good size for the sidewalls of a drawer. If you want to make it 3/8, that's okay. 5/16 you can find bits for, but they're a little bit trickier to locate. 7/16, anything in that realm is fine. If we were to do a 1/4 inch, that's awfully thin for making a sidewall of a drawer for. It's doable, but it's tricky, and I think it'll explain itself here shortly. But a 1/2 inch is a good easy number, and that's what I've milled this to. It has to be right on though. So when milling this thing down, you have to be really careful about what it is you're doing. If you take a little bit too much off, it's probably not the end of the world, but it's going to have a sloppy joint. If you leave it a little bit too wide or too thick, it's just not going to fit or line up with where it is we want to be for this cut. Okay, so getting rid of this, I'm also going to need a second bit, and I'm going to hang on to this, and I'll show you the steps in just a second. Alright, so top is labeled. I do not want to have the sliding dovetail, that's the joint we're going to be cutting or making, I don't want it to have go all the way through. I don't want to look at that from the top. I just feel like it's a little bit too busy for me. If that's the joint you want to have and show off a little bit of your work there, then that's totally great. If you are going to go that way, just a word to the wise, I would not veneer this on the top until you have the joinery cut. If you have the veneer on and then you start to cut with a router bit, you're going to get a ton of tear outs like crazy. Not so much to the right where I'm standing, not to the right, but as that bit is rotating, it'll come out here to the left, and this side is going to tear out like crazy. So just be cautious of those things. I would easily do the joint going all the way through and then veneer over top of that. If there is a tear out, you can glue it back in, you could patch it with a million different things. But I would hold off on veneering. Alright, for me, I'm going to have a stopped sliding dovetail. So unfortunately that complicates the conversation a bit. If I wanted to go all the way through, it would be easy enough to set up some type of a fence. Let's say this is a fence. I would set the bit to the height that I need. With the fence here, I can just go all the way through, flip it around, aligning the same position on the fence, go all the way through, and then switch to the next router bit. Because I'm going to have a stopped sliding dovetail, then I need to go in a different direction, which means I need to have a sled. Alright, so what I'm going to do on the sled is a couple of things. Firstly, I want to make sure that I can read where my marks are. The top is always going to be facing me. I need to set up stops left and right, and before I get involved with any of the stops, I need to set this bit to the correct position. I only want to have the height of this bit be tall enough to just barely kiss the interior surface of this drawer front. If I leave the bit at this height, that's a lot of material I'm cutting through, and it doesn't leave a lot on top of this bit for making my dovetail cut. So being very careful about this, I'm going to drop the bit until it's just barely engaging, and then I'm going to grab some material for stops. So let me see if I can show you what that looks like. For you woodworkers that are getting involved now in woodworking, I can't begin to tell you how lucky you are to have router tables that have adjustments from the top. Before, one would have to make adjustments by reaching into the router table and then manually raising and lowering this thing, which was just a bit of a mess. Totally doable, but not as much fun as one would think. All right, that looks like a decent height. So I'm not sure if you can see, but I'm looking at the tooth here to my left, and that is going to be just getting in a little bit of depth. Because of the curvature here, I'm going to be cutting deeper on the right, but that's totally fine. Okay, let me grab some stop material, and then I'll show you the next steps for this. Be right back.